Hey, welcome everybody to a We're Libertarians broadcast. I'm Hodey Johns. I am your host. We're going to do a reaction video today. It's with Eric July's response video on being libertarian to the Joe Jorgensen tweet. I have been told that my voice was squeaky last time, so hopefully my voice sounds nice and normal. I'm trying to be deep and I'm trying to be normal. Please list your comments and questions. If you can't hear me or for some reason my audio is still not working, please let me know because I would like to not waste an hour and a half of time. But yeah, thanks so much for joining, guys. Got 17 views already, so I'm really hoping it's not too squeaky. But we're going to kick it off here in just a minute. Do I sound normal? First person to say I sound normal is a good friend of mine. Am I still squeaking? Let me get those squawks, boy. All right. Well, this is probably another broadcast that I'm going to have to delete. All right. Do I sound normal? Moving on. So Joe Jorgensen made a tweet, and it will be discussed in this video, but it's getting a lot of traction, I think, for the positive, but I'd like to hear both sides of the issue. Thank you. Somebody says I sound good. If it sounds good to you, Paul, it sounds good to me. All right. Thanks so much, everybody. I will stop wasting your time now. Thank you for bearing with me. That first minute and 20 seconds was painful, but it's going to be more fun from here on out. All right. We got a video. Eric July being libertarians. He actually gets into the tweet, so I'm going to let him discuss the tweet. I'm going to go ahead and play it right now.
What's good, everybody? It's been a minute. Being libertarian, also being Liber TV. We are back. We have a lot going on in the background.
Yes, we do.
Things are coming.
Yeah.
Really big things are coming. I'm working on that. And we will have a lot new content and some announcements sort of surrounding that.
Oh, much hype, guys. Honestly, if it's not We're Libertarians, whatever, right? You know, whatever. Anyway.
Coming very soon. But today we got to talk about what everybody is talking about, and that's this right here. It's notified. I actually have Black Lives Matter, the hashtag muted on my Twitter. So, of course, I never saw that. Someone had to...
I don't know if he's going to read it. It says, so this is Joe Jorgensen's tweet. Again, many, many, many likes. We're getting a lot of positive traction in the party, a lot of new members, and a couple of members leaving. We're going to discuss it all right now. But she says it's not enough to be passively not racist. We must be actively anti-racist. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. 3 fists. Hashtag vote gold. Okay, so I would love to just discuss this as is and how I feel about it, but you are going to hear people like Eric July talk about it. And I want you to be able to respond when somebody like them talks to you. So here we go.
Share this with me. So let me give you my thoughts. But first, let's go through what Joe Jorgensen, who is the presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party, and what she had to say. Let's listen, or well, listen to me. It is not enough to be passively not racist. We must be actively anti-racist. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Hashtag vote gold. Very interesting.
Very interesting, yes.
All right. There's different layers that we sort of have to peel. We have to unpackage this.
He actually does a good job with the layers, so hear him out.
In order for you guys to not only understand, I think, where people are getting it wrong, but certainly my viewpoint. Let's start here. Black Lives Matter. There's a difference between the slogan and the movement and the organization. They are not the same thing.
I appreciate that he does this. There is a Marxist organization called Black Lives Matter. They are self-admittedly Marxist. We can work with them on maybe a couple of issues, but ultimately, if you're like, I like that organization, you're going to have a lot of those problems, right? Versus if you say Black Lives Matter, there's a phrase. And right now, all the right-ish libertarians assume you're talking about Black Lives Matter, the organization, when you talk about it. Most of the left libertarians understand that you're just talking about the movement in general. She is talking about the movement. Eric July does get it, so I'm going to let him keep going.
Though they are intertwined, they're connected. Absolutely. Absolutely. There is a more organized organization, group of people who dub themselves Black Lives Matter. They've popped a lot of this off. However, in a general movement, they are not the same. There's a lot of people who use this as a hashtag, use this as a slogan that aren't even connected to the actual organization. Okay, so with that being said, you have to understand that. And a lot of the criticism, which I believe is rightful, is that because if you use Black Lives Matter, some people are going to default to the organization, which is a proud Marxist trained organization. They are anti-private property rights and anti-more so capitalism and what we understand in the modern libertarian sense. That's not a secret. That's what it is that they.
Yeah, that's true. That is. I don't want to say every single member. We're part of a lot of organizations that don't know that we don't agree with every single thing, but we work with them on most things. There's a lot of pro-life libertarians, a lot of them. There's some minarchists and anarchists within the Libertarian Party. And so some people are members of the Libertarian Party and say, yes, I disagree on a couple of things. Now, in general, if you're a member of the Black Lives Matter organization, Eric is probably correct. They are of the left side of things. They have advocated for authoritarian measures, bigger government, things like on healthcare. They haven't always been great on guns. They're coming around on guns, and that's great, but they're more adopting the liberty position as opposed to the positions of their founding. So I understand. However, most people assumed, and Jo Jorgen herself would later clarify, yes, she was talking about the expression that Black Lives Matter, not the organization. Most people with common sense understood it, but he's fair to say that there might be people who thought for some reason our libertarian candidate was supporting a Marxist organization. She wasn't. She clarified it. The Libertarian Party actually clarified it. It is what it is. If you hear people talk about Black Lives Matter, this is kind of our first point of discussion. You should probably make sure, hey, by the way, are we talking about the organization or the phrase? Because there is a different conversation to be had with both. In this case, we're talking about the phrase. Eric's criticism is fair if we're talking about the organization. I will let him continue.
You believe in. And they're open about that. You read their platform, it has a lot of things that are crazy.
Yep.
Let's call it what it is. Now, the movement itself, though, which again sort of stems from it, but it's not the same, has tricked a lot of people into acting as if they claim every moral high ground that you can possibly think of. Because if you say Black Lives Matter, who could dare disagree with that? Who could dare disagree with that idea of Black Lives Matter? So you've been pigeonholed, or rather you've been put in a corner, and they will hold you to that ultimatum to say, if you don't say it and you disagree with Black Lives Matter, well, you're a racist. You must not think Black lives actually matter.
This is kind of a staple of the Mises Institute, kind of in general, when they take criticism. I'm not going to say this thing that is true just because it is true, just for your satisfaction. Sometimes there's just a true statement, and it's okay to say, well, you want me to say 1 + 1 = 2? Just because that makes you feel good? Well, sometimes a question comes up that is 1 + 1, and you need to be able to say 2 without being like, this is too easy. I'm not giving you that answer for your satisfaction. Don't be scared of unity. If for some reason you say, yes, I believe Black Lives Matter, but I have all these problems and worries and things about big government, that's fine. But it's okay to have that initial, yes, Black Lives Matter. Yeah, the statement can't possibly, like he says, it's not something that any rational person can possibly disagree with. But instead of running from it because it's too reasonable or too compassionate, go ahead and embrace it and see what allies you pick up along the way. When you focus only on the things that you don't have in common, you're going to have some problems when you talk to other people. You focus on the divisions instead of what you can unify over. Look, I don't know if you noticed, but if you look in the streets, you see a lot of left-leaning people that are carrying guns now. That's super cool for libertarians. Now, you could just be like, but they believe in all the, okay, yeah, they believe in all this other stuff. But if you want to be like, hey, that's really cool that you're down with the right to bear arms now, I just want to say I appreciate that. How much more credibility does that give you? This is why I like the Mises Institute. I know I'm going to take some flack for that. They publish a lot of good things, but they do have these kind of problems, and this is why. You do need to be able to say, hey, when there's something that's reasonable, I'm okay with saying it. All right, I will allow him to continue.
Now that's bogus. And as long as you idiots continue to act as if that's the case, this is what's going to happen.
Hurt feelings. I'm an idiot. This is him taking the low ground. If people want to take the low ground and name call guys, give it to him. Take the high ground every time. I don't care. A lot of times people get tired of people taking that low ground. They want to join them there. Never, never, never. This is what keeps them on the bottom. This is what caps their support is like 20, 30, 40%. Even within the Libertarian Party, it's even less outside the Libertarian Party. Just take the high ground. It's okay. This is not language policing. This is not tone policing. I'm not doing any of that. I'm not saying you even have to use the term Black Lives Matter, but if it comes up, I just don't see any reason to fight it. And yeah, you're not an idiot if you choose to use it. Go ahead.
They're going to continue to hold you to those ultimatums. They get to do whatever it is they want to do, whatever clown stuff that they want to do. Quite often advocate things that are antithetical to what we understand in modern libertarianism. Now, my particular issue that I had with her and Joe is this idea that I've heard a lot is that it's not enough to be passively, not racist, and you have to be actively more so anti-racist. That's garbage, hot garbage, hottest of the garbage. Because
this is the hottest of the garbage. Not like, let's go out and kill some Jews. Not, hey, let's hang some black people from trees. This is the hottest of garbage to say that you're anti-racist. All right, Eric, you've entrenched yourself. I will allow you to explain why no garbage could possibly be hotter than saying that we should be anti-racist. Continue.
If you have been a good person for your life, let's say you treat people like they're individuals. Doesn't mean you treat them like they're the same. It doesn't mean that you don't understand what race is. I don't like the whole, I'm colorblind. Look, I'm black. That's fine. You can acknowledge that. I'm not colorblind by any means. I know what color you are.
This is something that I think Eric is correct on. Again, I'm not a demagogue. I'm not like, I like Eric July. I like being libertarian. This is a reasonable thing to say. A lot of people think that color blindness is this, oh yes, I never see color. And I always, no, come on. Your eyes function, right? It's okay to see the color and acknowledge the color. All right, I'll let him keep going. But again, that's a good point. And just like I'm trying to walk the talk here. I am not going to let him say reasonable things. And this is not an anti-Eric July video. He actually wants a discussion. I'm having a discussion with him. I think he's a reasonable guy. We're having it out. That's something that I agree with him on.
You can acknowledge that. But if you generally treat people like they're individuals, in the sense that you are not actively being racist, you're just being a good person, that's good enough. And don't let anybody ever lecture you into thinking that's not the case, or that can't be the case.
All right, so this is really the crux of the issue. Is it enough, if you're not anti-racist, to just be a good person? If you're not actively anti-racist, can you still be a good person? Sure. The thing is there is different kind of musts in this case. There's a moral compulsion, this is what you must do, and there's a government, this is what we must do. Jo Jorgensen is one of the most radical candidates we put up. She has already suffered a lot for talking about how she'd take away business licensing, and therefore that would get rid of the discrimination laws, because government no longer license your business. You're allowed to operate. And people have already had a lot of issues. So we already are aware that Jo Jorgensen is not saying government must force people to not be racist. That's where you get to that like 1984 thought crime stuff. We already know that's not what she's talking about. Anybody who thinks that's what she's talking about with like a bake the cake thing is, I don't want to say disingenuous, but they're misguided. That's not what she's talking about. Maybe they haven't followed her enough to know that stands on her. But there is like a moral compulsion. If somebody says something racist in front of you, can you still be a good person and say nothing? Maybe you think yes. So let's do a different example here. If your child falls into a bathtub and starts to drown and you do nothing, are you morally okay to have done nothing? Well, I think people would see that second scenario and say, well, of course not. Well, then where does that stop? This is not about solving every racist problem in the entire world. We can't possibly do that. There are too many racists out there. There's too many people out there. And so we can't stop it all. But you can stop what's in your sphere. And you can say, hey, I just heard somebody say something racist. I'm going to go tell them to knock that off. That is a hallmark of being a good person. Eric is saying it's okay to be a good person and not be anti-racist. It is very difficult to see a good person when a whole bunch of racism is going down, right? When we see a police officer do nothing as his comrades go and do something bad, and we say, well, that police officer is a good person. Well, that goodness didn't really translate into action because he allowed this bad thing to happen. So if we allow racism to continue in our lives and we know it's happening, we choose not to say anything about it, that's a problem. I will allow him to continue.
That is absolutely good enough. And that's crazy that there's individuals that think that there's something wrong with that. You've been living your life for the vast majority of your life being a relatively good person, being good people. Not being racist. And by the way, that's not brave. It's a very easy thing to be not racist. Congratulations, guys. You're proving yourself that you're not racist. Racism is bad. We all know that. Shut the hell up.
Yeah, shut the hell up because you say racism is bad. Taking a stand against racism involves dismantling some laws that we have in effect here in America today. There's this attitude that you get about people when you say you're not, oh, you're so brave. You're brave and courageous. Oh, clap for you. Pat yourself on the back. He said it, shut the hell up because you're not racist. Being not racist is a great start. There's no reason why we can't encourage that. What we're telling people like Eric to do is to take the next step. And then when they see that kind of thing, to call it out, to put a stop to it, to say like, hey, knock that racism off. And that is a higher calling. That is something that requires some effort. I got to tell you guys, I'm going to tell you a personal story right now. At the restaurant, we have a lot of people that are like, hey, I don't want to be served by a Latino or a Latina person. I don't want to be served by a Hispanic. Usually the people who make those requests are very stupid. And so they don't want to, they say like, I don't want to get served by one of them Mexicans, right? And this is something we complied with all of the time. All of the time. I don't always say every single person. I'm not trying to over-exaggerate the problem of racism, but if we get 6,000 guests in a day, we will have somewhere between 3 and 5 of them ask for a non-Spanish-speaking person, a non-Mexican, and not, whatever they want. And we just give it to them because we are so in this mindset of doing whatever they want. And so we want to make them happy as a guest. That's been our focus all of the time. The customer is always right. We have a white server over here. We'll just give them over there and that'll be fine. That's a huge problem. And that's something that I and pretty much every other restaurant in the nation have allowed to happen. So taking a stand against racism is hard. You may aggravate your employer at some point. I know, especially in the restaurant industry, if a host comes forward and says, I am not going to comply with this guest's demand, you are confused on what to do because you've got a CEO looking down and says, if I get this complaint, you're in a lot of trouble. I don't care. I had a regional manager. I hated his guts. I'll go ahead and name him Keith. And he would see something like this to say like, there's too many Mexicans at your restaurant. And he'd be like, well, why did you not find out enough about these guests and sit them in a place where there was more white people? That's on you for not finding out enough about them. Keith was a regional manager for a restaurant, and he was not the only one like that. He's the worst one that I've encountered, and there's many issues I have with Keith, but this is a real thing that happens. And so if I were to take a stand, you don't have to be like, oh, you're so brave. I would be in a lot of trouble with my regional manager. I may lose my job. Hosts may lose their job. Servers may lose their job. People who say, no, I will not serve you are going to take a hit on reviews. Restaurants aren't the only line of work. I'm just simply saying that because that's my area of expertise. But if you refuse to allow racism to continue, that is not no big deal. That requires some backbone and some strength, and you should be lauded for it and not sarcastically clapped at for it. Yeah, I'm not talking about not going around dropping the N-word, but taking a stand against racism takes some work. I'll let him continue.
But nonetheless, I can absolutely understand if you just go about your life being a good person, go be a good person. And that is absolutely good enough in my honest assessment. You don't have to be actively anti-racist. Who says that you have to prioritize that? We all are individuals that have different things that we prioritize. We have different preferences. And those turn into certain actions, purposeful actions. And it's not always going to be the same.
This is something I can agree with him in part on. So when we all have things that we're good at. You don't have to be good at everything. I think it can be overwhelming. I think part of the best parts of society are when you are allowed to do what you're an expert at and share with everybody else, hopefully on the planet, but every other person with what you're experts at, and you come together and you make a society. You know, I mean, this gets heavily into economics. I'm really good at making the rubber that gets made for shoes. Okay, well, you do that, and we're going to partner you with a bunch of shoemakers, and we're going to sell those shoes off, and then the money that you get from those shoes are going to help you get things that you would have no idea how to do. Build a house, drive a car, you know, get a computer, get a kitchen, you know, all kinds of stuff like that. So it's actually a really good point. You don't have to be great at everything. But there are certain times where you do need to say, this is my line. I am not crossing this line. And when somebody makes a racist request or does something racist in front of you, that is something that you should put a stop to. You don't necessarily have to be the greatest anti-racist crusader. I have a great friend who has dedicated his life, literally his financial life, into finding and rooting out pedophiles and pedophile rings. And he does a great job of it. He takes a lot of flack for it. He gets in a lot of dangerous situations, but that's what he's really good at. That being said, if you did something racist in front of this person, he would call that out. Okay. You can still excel at this thing and then be like, no, get out of here. Now, he could have dedicated his life to being more anti-racist, right? To say, I'm going to go, my job is going to be to seek out racism wherever it may be found and chomp it. That's not what he's decided to do. Being anti-racism, like I said, if your child falls in the bathtub, you pull them out. Now, it's not to save every child in every bathtub across the nation. This is when you're anti-racist, this isn't to go seeking. This isn't a vigilante request, right? To stop every racist act in the entire world. But this is saying when you see racism, you can stop it. If you would like to stop more racism and go out seeking and pointing it out, that's fantastic. There needs to be less racism and there needs to be more people like that. But, you know, for now, do what you can in your sphere. I'll let him continue.
I've actually argued that should be the strength of libertarians, is that they don't all do the same thing. Mm-hmm. This idea that we have to all agree all the damn time to build coalitions is nonsense. No, we don't. You belong to some subculture. You can reach people that I could never fathom. I could never think about reaching. That's fine.
But the point of a coalition is to reach those people, Mr. July. You've got your faction. Mises is a great faction. I have a coalition and alliance with the Mises Institute. The Mises Institute has other coalitions, and they make friends and they talk with people. If you've ever worked on a campaign, you're aware of what I'm talking about. You've got your thing. Yes. Do you have to build alliances to win? Yes. Even if we delete politics suddenly, does that mean you're suddenly going to need no more alliances? Of course not.
But I'm not going around saying we need more musicians. You have to be a musician. You have to like my band. No. Or you have to like this political commentator. You have to like this person. You have to like what it is that they do. It's in sports. You have to be a fan of sports. No, you don't. You don't have to actively be anti or pro anything. Just be a good person. Now, me personally, I'm in opposition to both. Let's be very clear. Both Black Lives Matter, as well as, in the organization, as well as the movement. Now, I already explained to you why the organization, I would never be in support of anything like that. But the movement has just turned into some deal where people are begging to be accepted and acknowledged by white folks. No, let's be 100 about it. What they're actually doing is they want black folk to be treated like they feel white people treat other white people. And that's for losers, man.
All right. So what is for losers? Black people being treated like a white person treats other white people. White people treating black people like the same way a white person. So treating my black friend, my white friend, just the same is for losers. That is what he said. White people treating black people the same way they treat other white people. I got to be honest. You got to go digging to find out how that's for losers. I could see maybe an argument that we should treat other white people better and also treat other black people better. Maybe if he's saying we need to treat everybody better, but we should be treating everybody the same regardless of their skin color is the hope, right? I got to be honest with you. This was the most stunning part to me. I almost assumed that he misspoke, but I can't quite figure it out. Yeah, I'll let him keep going.
That's for absolute losers. I'll never get down with that. Never. But that's what it's turned to. You have all of these people, or not even organizations, corporate entities, talking about Black Lives Matter. This is what we're doing to combat racism. We're going to lift up these voices, amplify. And when they say amplify voices, they're not talking about me. Trust me.
This is a good point.
It's more so the same damn ideas. General leftism is more so what it is.
Now, this is true. A lot of times when there's an organization that says Black Lives Matter and we're going to be really cool and treat everybody the same, and look how we're amplifying these black voices, those black voices tend to not be the Eric July voice, right? They tend to be the same voices that echo the same sentiments, that echo the things that they want, right? And so when you do see a left of center company business that's trying to appeal to Black Lives Matter because they know that most of those people are left of center if they use those kind of terms. He's talking about the movement. I'm glad that we've established that. So we're talking about the movement, Black Lives Matter. You're going to have them say generally left of center things as opposed to difficult things. And that sucks. That's trying to create a homogenized voice and try to treat them like they're all the same, and it does suck. We do want to have counter voices. We're libertarians, values diversity in voices. We have people from all walks and thoughts, and I think that is important. And yeah, and we value each of those voices because they lend a different perspective, a different point of view, different experiences, and that reward goes to the viewers, the people who listen. And I agree with Eric on that in that regard. We should not just be hearing from the people that agree with them. We should be hearing from all of them. All right, I'll let him continue.
They want different shades, colors, types, genders, sexes, and sexualities, or what have you, that say the same damn thing. The diversity ain't in thought in anything that comes from that general left. When they talk about amplifying voices and stuff, we want to amplify people that look different from these other people, but also say the same damn thing.
The trouble is when you generalize the left, when you say the general left. I get the people you're talking about. I am not blind. But how many left-leaners do you know might say, oh, I love the Green New Deal? But then on the converse say, well, how many of you support banning meat or air travel or increase your taxes to 70%? They'll be like, well, no, we don't support any of that. Most of your left friends do not support those things. Now you can say that's in the Green New Deal, and most left-leaners support the Green New Deal. Look, this is the American voter we're talking about here, right? They haven't looked into it. They have an idea of what they want. They want to help the environment. They want to heal things. They see that they're given the raw end of the deal. One thing that I love about the Mises Institute is their economic policy and their willingness to bring economics to light. We have things that would help a lot of these poor people, right? And so that's one way that I would like to reach out to them. Is the diversity of thought there on the left to say, if you, for example, like capitalism and you say, man, I really like the idea of self-ownership, you're going to have some problems in some rings of the left. You have the exact problem on the right. I mean, look how hive-minded this became with the right-leaning libertarians on the Joe Jorgensen tweet. They all assumed she was talking about the terrorist organization. She was obviously not. It has been clarified that it is not. But you don't know, when you're right or when you're a little too far right, it's hard to see. You see these dog whistles everywhere. You get to snowflakey when you're too far left or too far right. Somebody hurt my feelings. Somebody's saying something I don't like, right? And it's hard. So that's where it is. I don't like it when we too generalize the left to the right. They do need to be able to take criticisms, but I understand that there is a lack of diversity of thought if you get too far left or too far right. That being said, people that are left of center, right of center, I've been called, because of my defense of this, I've been called left. I am a former Tea Party Republican. I am definitely a capitalist. I'm a free market person, and I still think Black Lives Matter is okay. And so people are so willing to lump me in with this, this must be the left. I mean, we've had like 3 people, I am never listening to We Are Libertarians again. And I'm sorry, you're not louder than the 80 people that are like, man, thank you guys so much for reaching out to us. I'm going to start watching We Are Libertarians. I'm going to talk more about that in a second here because it's important in context with the Joe Jorgensen tweet. But I'll let Eric continue.
But nah, man, it's a joke of a movement as far as I'm concerned. And they do not get monopoly on being against racism or not being racist. But that's how they gear the conversation. It's what happens when you have this very tricky slogan, catchy slogan. Because again, if you are in opposition to Black Lives Matter in literal terms, they get to say that you're a racist. How could you be against that? And then they try to disregard all the other things that they try to package with it, all the other nonsense that these groups tend to and these organizations tend to advocate. They act like that doesn't even matter. That's not even a thing. Oh, well, you're against police brutality, so you should be for Black Lives Matter. I've been against police brutality for I don't know how long. In fact, when it comes to the state, I'm
going to pause him there because he makes a good point. All right. Are some people trying to package other things onto Black Lives Matter? Yes. A great example, the organization Black Lives Matter is trying to package other things other than Black Lives Mattering. And so therefore, when you say, hey, I kind of don't like universal health care, all of a sudden you've gone against Black Lives Matter. That being said, within the context of the conversation, how many people do you know when you say, yeah, I think Black Lives Matter, assume that you mean universal health care, big government policies taking over the economy? If that's what you think, you've drifted way too far right. It's time to recenter yourself. And it's okay. Like I said, I came from the right. And that's okay. You recenter yourself a little bit and you say, okay, you know what? I could do this a little bit. The same goes to the left. I'm not just trying to rip on the right over here, right? When you see all of a sudden somebody loves capitalism, he must be racist. Oh, this guy who loves the top-down corporate structure. You've gone too far left. Recenter yourself. In this case, we're talking about a very centric thing that most people understand. I guess I'll get into it right now. We are losing a lot of loudmouth people, both We Are Libertarians and Joe Jorgensen, that say, oh, this was my last straw. Telling me to be anti-racist was the last straw for me with the Libertarian Party or with your podcast. For every one of those people, 2 more will sign up or have signed up and said, you know what? You took a stand against racism. I really like that. So I'm sorry, if you're a bigot and you've been hanging on to this podcast or the Libertarian Party, bye. I hope the other guys treat you better. I hope they don't, because I want you to come back. I don't hate these people that are leaving the party. My goal is not to antagonize them or demean them. But if you are so triggered by somebody saying that we need to be anti-racist, that you leave the party or you get off of this podcast, you probably weren't all that libertarian to begin with. You were really close to a certain other ideology, and all it took was for us to say, we're going to be anti-racist here, and that's it. For the people in the comments, no, I know Eric's not a bigot, but this is where the discussion comes from and how we look that way. Now, Eric's not been a part of the party for a long time. I believe he'll get into that later, right? He's not associated with the party or, and doesn't want to be a part of it. That's fine. Not everybody who is leaving because they're upset about this is a bigot. I will say I've had a good friend. He shares a lot of my contact. We had a discussion. This was the last straw for him. Not saying he's a bigot, but I'm saying he's closer to a different ideology other than libertarianism. And this is the conversation that we had to have. I understand when you see somebody that says we must do something good. This is how Social Security got sold to us, right? We should have saved for retirement. We should force people to save for retirement. It's a good thing. It's the right thing to do. At the time, it was really trendy. And I would have paid great money to go back in time and be like, wait, guys, this is going to become the biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of the world. So time out with that. I understand there's some reservation when we say people have to do good things. There's a time when you have to say, yes, that employer has the right to discriminate. Hooters doesn't have to hire men. The Boy Scouts of America shouldn't be forced to have homosexuals. We shouldn't force companies to do these things. That being said, it's different to cheer on those companies that do discriminate. I fully support boycotting them. I fully support them losing business. I fully support reporting their behavior. If you see someone acting in a racist way, report it to their employer. Their employer will use discrimination and say, I am allowed to say, I am prejudiced against this kind of behavior. You're a racist. I am prejudiced and discriminatory against racists. And so that same ability for people to discriminate can be used in a virtuous way. When we say, yeah, I don't do business with racists anymore. I'm happy that my restaurant now is a place where we can be like, hey guys, people who make these requests for no Mexican people, tell them they get the server they get, or they can take off. They can scram. And more restaurants are starting to do this because videos are everywhere. And if you get caught doing this, you're now in more trouble than you would have been with your old CEO, So we are happily anti-racist. All right, I will let him continue.
Sanction racism. I have an article. You can go to beinglibertarian.com. I did this about 5 years ago when we started Being Libertarian, not too long after, maybe 2015, 2016, 4 or 5 years ago. And the title was along the lines of, if African Americans, black people, understood their history, they would be libertarians. And I go through the history and documenting the state endorsed racism, whether it be through slave codes, black codes, Jim Crow laws. People seem to forget that all that stuff was state sanctioned.
All this is true.
A lot of people forget that. Yep. They just act like it was just private individuals that did it. And I'm not saying there weren't. But an institution like slavery, that doesn't exist without the state for as long as it existed in this country.
I just finished reading a great book about how it required government-controlled economy and for them to really get racism to be slavery to be as widespread as it was. Because it turns out they actually would have saved money by paying them like people and not having to house them and not having to ship them over. It was this great, it was actually a Murray Rothbard essay from a while ago. But yeah, anyhow, this is all true.
But those are bad things. Slavery is antithetical to capitalism. I know people act like capitalism, it's just owning property. Therefore, slavery is capital. No, you idiot. Slavery is the forcible use of one person to serve the purposes of another. It is inherently anti-capitalism and anti-libertarianism because it violates the core private property right in self-ownership. Moving forward, though, what happened to George Floyd? Was it because of his race? It's not enough proof that I've seen that proves that that's the case. For whatever reason, a lot of people seem to think that black people can't get in altercations and get the short end of the stick or be victims and not be a victim because it's their race, because they're black or something like that.
All right, so this opens a whole other, this isn't even the ultimate direction I want to take this. This is something I will disagree with him on. I agree that there's a certain mentality that if anything bad happens to a black person, maybe it was racism. We're hyper aware of it nowadays. It's okay to have that question. Now, if you find that no racism was involved, all right, maybe you let it go. You know, what we saw happen to Tony Timpa, where he got strangled to death, kind of in a similar fashion to George Floyd. Was racism involved? It's very difficult, this question, because this is a matter of motive. Racism is a motive, right? I have to know that you killed this person because of their color of skin. I am not God. I don't have access to everyone's hearts. What I do see is this disproportionate violence happening to the Black community. A lot of that is because of the laws and the way that they're set up. And a lot of this is because of a certain mentality. Larry Sharp talks a lot about this. I love it. Where he talks about how a normal non-racist person can end up discriminating against people's color of skin when they're on the police force. And it's a long explanation, and I didn't want to too much get into it here. But essentially what happens, you go through a process where you are able to identify people who are poor, the most likely to be breaking a law. If you have a quota, if you have to, whatever it may be. I know quotas are illegal. People still do them, guys. Ask anybody in the police force. That these are the people that you target, and you end up targeting them even though you're not a racist. So it's a complex question. You have to know some motivations. And there are some people who say, oh, anything that happened bad to a Black person is because they were Black. That's obviously not true, but it's okay to ask the question and say, like, hey, this is something worth looking into simply because of this disproportionate system. It's just the way it is. All right, keep going.
Nonetheless, what happened to George Floyd was what most rational people thought was wrong, or something was wrong there. Now, it's spurred about these different movements. Now it's cool, the signal right now. They have a lot to momentum.
The problem when you talk about the spirit of somebody's movement, when you're not in that movement, is that you don't kind of recognize the spirit of the movement. Most capitalists do not believe in top-down corporate structures. They don't believe in the Fed. They don't believe in centralized banking, right? There are some loudmouth Hoppian capitalists that do. Keynes was a really good example of a bad capitalist. Paul Krugman, capitalist, right? Bad people. I guess I shouldn't judge their character too much here. Bad capitalists at the very least, right? And so we don't appreciate them. They are not conducive to the spirit of movement. To assume that all capitalists must be like Hoppe or Keynes or Krugman, I mean, we're not. And so the problem is when you judge from the outside, this is a problem that comes up. I'm not going to judge the spirit of the Mises Institute. I'm going to treat them like individuals. I have talked about problems that the Mises Institute has had, and I've explained why, but I'm not condemning them all as racists. I'm not condemning them all as bigots. I'm simply explaining why this type of thing comes up. But that's very different from saying they are all racist. They are all bigots. They are all bad. With the Black Lives Matter, the spirit of this whole movement is government takeover, right? Is the spirit of the people who believe in Black Lives Matter these bad things that he's about to list? No.
But it was an objectively bad thing in terms of what kind of happened to him. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But to act as if you get to utilize that moment to say, well, you have to support everything that it is that we do. When we hashtag Black Lives Matter, or we are a movement as a movement, because you are against that as well, is total nonsense. It doesn't even pass the smell test. It doesn't even make sense. I can be against your hack organization. I could see that the movement is a joke.
You can oppose racism in your own way. You don't have to. This is not a Bible. This is not an oath, right? You don't have to pray to Black Lives Matter. I don't know what he thinks they are. This is not one of those, like, if you don't use the words Black Lives Matter, you can't be right. I guess he's right, but the spirit of it isn't some type of deferent, I must pray to it. The only people who believe that are not a part of it. I can assure you they are not a part of it. Because nobody who's in the movement is like, yes, we must solve everything our way. Yes, there's only one solution, and the solution is this Marxist government. Yes. No. Most people who use that term are not supporting that. And so the issue is he doesn't have the spirit correct. And it really helps to have insider knowledge. I wouldn't say you have to join it. I'm not one of those, hey, don't knock it till you've tried it people. You can know drugs are bad without doing drugs, right? Because they have a negative effect on other people's lives. But to say that the spirit of the movement is really bad when we've actually seen them embrace things like gun rights, the ability to defend yourself, and limiting the authoritarian might of police officers, maybe have their spirit a little bit wrong. Yeah, there's a few Marxists in there. There's a few black supremacists in there. I'm not going to defend every single person, just like I won't condemn every single person. But the general spirit of the movement really isn't what he's saying it is. All right, go ahead, Eric.
While also not being racist. For whatever reason, people don't seem to think that's the case. But let's just call it what it is. It's a Hail Mary. This is a Hail Mary. That's what this is.
All right, so it's a Hail Mary because basically you're going to get beat. And so what you're trying to do is just throw something up there, and hope that it lands with a lot of people by throwing out Black Lives Matter. So now the accusation is that she does not actually believe in this Black Lives Matter movement, which I guess coming from Eric is actually a positive, right? She doesn't actually believe in the Black Lives Matter movement because the movement means all these bad things. And so she's saying, Black Lives Matter to try and reel some of them in, right? And this Hail Mary because she's on a losing team. Again, that's judging someone's soul. It is not that way, but I guess I can't really convince him that it is that way. You don't have to be a part of the movement. You can be anti-racist in your own way. You really can. I don't want to take away from that point of his. You don't have to say Black Lives Matter to be a good person. You don't have to say Black Lives Matter or be a part of the Black Lives Matter movement to be a part of the anti-racist movement. It doesn't hurt, but you can do it on your own terms. Anyway, back to this Hail Mary idea.
Well, you have a lot, I've seen this before, libertarians kissing ass, feeling as if this is what they have to do in order to try to get support from that block of people.
I am not kissing ass. I truly do not care how, if you are a libertarian, do you really care how the other two parties see you at this point? Is this such a popularity game? Oh, we must kiss their butts. Look, I believe in evangelism and outreach. I believe in trying to be appealing. But that being said, I'm certainly not going to kiss ass. Right? I am not going to suddenly be like, well, maybe a little Fed is okay. Maybe a little taxation is okay. I'll try to phrase it in a way that makes it a little less radical sounding to people that are skittish when I talk about ending the Fed, ending the IRS, getting rid of taxation. But I'm still going to stick by my guns. I'm just going to phrase it a little better. If there's a movement out there called Black Lives Matter, and you believe Black Lives Matter, and this is an area that you can have in common, guess what, guys? When you see these protests, how many Joe Biden signs do you see them wielding around? This is not like 4 years ago. This is a very different vision of America. This is a version of America right now. Ordinarily, this would be all politics. And right now, there's a lot of politics involved, but it's not about Joe Biden. It's not about Donald Trump. So why not pick some of these people that are like, well, here's the thing. I'm left-leaning, but I'm pro-gun. I'm against an expansive police state. Well, all right. You might have some libertarian leanings. Can I talk to you a little bit about your economics? Why not? Hey, I've reached out to you. We both agree Black Lives Matter. Why not? It's just an evangelism technique. All right. I'll let him keep going.
Libertarians have had the ideas on their side. Mm-hmm. We've been against police brutality for the longest. And by the way, I'm not a member. I want to be very clear. I'm not a member of the Libertarian Party at all.
Oh.
I'm a libertarian, but I'm not a big L libertarian. And I don't hate big L libertarians, though some big L libertarians do not like me. They're not fond of me. Nonetheless, they want the support, and it's totally understandable. You have something that you can identify, but just identifying the problem isn't good enough because you can have the wrong solutions.
This is true. The left is really great about identifying some problems and giving you a very statist solution that will end up being more of the problem. right? This is why the libertarian solution of getting rid of business licenses so that you don't have to deal with discrimination laws anymore is a radical departure from the left of let's force everyone to not be allowed to discriminate. Those two things are very different. I don't encourage discrimination. I will tolerate it in a legal sense. I will not tolerate it in a moral sense, right? So again, he's talked about layers at the very beginning. He talked about the unpacking we have to do, and this is part of the unpacking. You have to be willing to do the work. I'm disappointed that he stopped short of what Joe Jorgensen really is. I guess he doesn't understand the spirit of it, so I guess I can't put that on him, but I'll let him keep going.
And this is what happens when you try to go out of your way to appease to these types, knowing damn well that they don't want what you want. And often cases, they will advocate things that are antithetical to what it is that you want. We already saw that the whole defund the police thing was a fraud.
Okay, that's a different point. I'm going to let him finish that before I tear that point apart. But the thing is when you reach out to them, the idea is, are we lending our momentum to them, or are we poaching their people to ours? Because I think we do want to grab their people and make them ours and make them libertarians. We don't want to lend credence to this Marxist culture. If you truly believe that Joe Jorgensen's tweet is lending power to some terrorist far left organization full of socialists, you really don't understand these socialists very well, because they don't like libertarians one bit. This is going to poach their people that are honest about their philosophies, that actually care about freedom. And the thing is, it's working. Our podcast has more listeners and more subscribers after this incident. There are more people signing up than are leaving. Some people are leaving. More people are joining. Some people are leaving the Libertarian Party over this. More people are joining. Based on what you know of the Libertarian Party, do you think the Marxists are going to take us over now? Do you think suddenly we're going to be like, well, maybe we should tell the government what to do? Maybe the government should tell us how to live our lives. You know, we had Gary Johnson bake the cake. Oh, that's what the party is now. Because Bake the Cake was so close to being tremendously popular among libertarians, right? When anybody suggests a statist solution, they're just so close to being really popular in the Libertarian Party, right? Guys, please. All right. The Libertarian Party is going to be just fine taking a couple people with imperfect beliefs and converting them into true, full-blown libertarians, right? I came from the right. I know people who came from the left. We're kind of in the same place now because we say, you know what? This is the right place to be. Freedom, liberty, justice for all. All right, Eric.
It was a money laundering scheme. Well, they just wanted to, they wasn't going to get rid of these institutions like, you know, police officers or anything like that, and then have you keep the money and bring about these like privatized forms of security, defense, and court systems and so forth. That wasn't what they were advocating. They wanted to steal from you. They just wanted to have the woke police and to reroute the money to these guys probably have worthless degrees and social workers, and that was all they wanted to do.
All right. So, defunding the police. Yes, when we talked about defunding the police, are there some government entities that were like entertaining the idea, but they would never actually let you keep your tax dollars? Of course. Pretty much every government entity was talking about that. When a libertarian talks about defunding the police, do you think they're talking about the government keeping all that money, or do you think they're talking about returning their tax value dollars to you? This is why the libertarian message that he's talking about, that superior message, should absolutely embrace people that believe in defunding the police. Because then they say, okay, well, I believe in defunding the police. You believe in defunding the police. What do you think should happen to that money when the police are defunded? Ask somebody on the left. You can even get pretty far left on this. And most of them would tell you to return it to the people. Then you can say, hey, those Democrats and those guys over there, like, you know, they actually support keeping the money and giving it to all these other things. And they'll say, well, I don't like that one bit. Well, there's your in for libertarianism, right? This is a great outreach, right? This is why it's like, he's talking about how he doesn't like using the term defund the police because it's just been hijacked by people that want to hold on to the money and give it to other government people instead of utilizing it. There's nothing wrong with utilizing. I mean, this is the Mises Institute, right? The Deist essay, right? Blood and Soil. They have taken something with very far right-leaning origins, right? And said like, hey, I think I can make libertarians, right? So you think they'd be able to understand if somebody wants to say, hey, let's take a term, maybe used by people that are not just like us, but that we agree with, and being able to utilize it. This is true with both Black Lives Matter and defund the police. It's funny. I remember defunding the police thinking that was more right of center up until like 3 months ago, but shows where the real party's values are. Anyhow.
Getting your money or keeping your money was never an option, never was on the table. But that's the type of things that happen. You got to be paying attention. You got to be mindful of that. And you'd be foolish to act as if they want what libertarians want. This is why I'm perfectly okay. I understand why it's meaningful, conducive to the libertarian cause to link up with those groups, but have some dialogue. Act as if you got the ideas on your side.
We do have the ideas on the side. Again, I don't disagree with him, but I also don't see this as an end of dialogue. I think that's the problem, is he sees Black Lives Matter and he sees defund the police, and what he assumes, Black Lives Matter, that just feeds into the leftists. Defund the police, that just feeds into the left and the big government types. That pipeline goes both ways, right? You can take people from that pipeline, right? You can, if your message is strong enough, and I agree with him that the libertarian message is the correct one, the right one. There's nothing wrong with advertising the libertarian message. But if you're that right, then you can just say like, hey, I've identified, hey, we're on the same pipeline right now. How about instead of going that way, we go this way? It's not an end of the dialogue. I don't know where he's getting this, where he thinks, if anything, this has kicked off a firestorm of dialogue, right? To say Black Lives Matter. We're having more dialogue about it than ever before. So the assumption that we're saying Black Lives Matter, so that's the end of the conversation, I don't know where he gets it.
You can even lead with empathy. Mm-hmm. I understand why you feel as if you feel. I understand this is a bad thing. Yeah, you're hurting. But you can do that while not accepting everything it is that they do, not even accepting them as a movement. My bad, I'm spitting all over the place. But you can do that. You don't have to accept them as a movement or anything and embrace their cause just because, we're holding up signs that say Black Lives Matter and we don't like black people being killed by the police. That's fine. Congrats. We've been talking about that for decades. Mm-hmm. So meet them. Have a conversation with them.
Yeah. How many of them do you think you're going to meet if you're like, well, I don't like to use the words Black people matter, Black lives matter. I don't like to talk about I do believe in that, but I don't like to say the words defunding the police because it triggers me, because I snowflake a little too hard over it. Like, if it's something you agree on, that's how you get the conversation started, right? This is how you open the door. You don't open the door with antagonism. And he's talking about this right now, leading with empathy. He's right when he says this. This is just why I don't understand why he is so opposed to the Joe Jorgensen tweet, right? Because this is how the conversation happens. We're gaining more people. It's already borne fruit, and it's like 24 hours since it happened, right? We should have done it years ago. That's what I want to close with, so I won't say that now, but I'll let him keep going.
But when you just blindly accept and embrace what it is that they do, often in fear of not being called racist, and they're going to call you racist no matter what you do is push their cause. So whatever garbage they package, that's what they package, and you've assisted them in moving that along because you're not acting as if you have some sort of esteem about what it is that you believe in or yourself or your ideas. Go be great. We can have a conversation, say, nah, we ain't with that. You got a point here. That's fine.
So when you say you got a point here, right? Defund the police, Black Lives Matter. That's the point. Let me talk to you about some different things. I agree with all this right now, right? You don't have to buy into some wholesale lefty organization. I have personally poached people from the Black Lives Matter movement. I don't even want to say that I've done it. Liberty has become more appealing to them since the start of government botching everything up between COVID and systemic racism and police brutality. They've messed so many things up that they're like, hey, you know what? All of a sudden, this get rid of the government thing seems a lot better. I've been a part of the process because I've been a friend that they know who's a libertarian that's willing to talk to them, and I can unite with them over issues like that. But this is where it comes from. You know, they are sold on Black Lives Mattering. If you believe that the majority of the people that use it are completely sold on big government solutions, you just don't understand the movement.
I don't got to accept your slogans and whatnot to do that.
Okay, true.
This is a Hail Mary by way of a lot of libertarians. I get it. Being pressured into saying things, the slogan sounds very good. And if they want to be disingenuous, they can do that, right? Because you got to accept that only thing that Black Lives Matter, only thing that it entails is wanting justice. That's horse crap. And anybody that's been paying attention knows that is horse crap. Joe, that's garbage. She don't know what she's talking about.
Garbage. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Again, this is low ground stuff. Let him have it.
You a good person. Continue to be a good person. You don't have to if you want. I mean, you can, but you don't have to go be actively anti-racist to try to signal to a group of people that if they want to call you racist or what other names and phobias and all kinds of things, they're going to call you that anyway. There ain't nothing you can do to stop them, and signaling won't help.
So let's talk about culture for a second here, because again, he's talking about you don't have to be anti-racist. You don't have to speak out against it. Do you think a libertarian culture or a libertarian government, or lack of government, as the case may be, would come about in a culture where people were tolerant of racism, were accepting even of racism, were allowing racism to happen, didn't really care so much about racism, didn't care to speak out against it? Or do you think that this libertarian governance, or lack thereof, would come about better in a society where we say, no, personally, we don't give our tax dollars to that. We don't give not tax dollars, sorry. I don't give my business to people who are racist, to business owners who are racist, to racist businesses and policies. This is how the market fixes itself. And this was supposed to be the highlight, you guys. This is why we said, hey, we don't need anti-discrimination laws. Take away licensing. You don't need business licensing, because what our culture will do is say, yeah, we take these businesses that are against racism and we give them a lot of money, and we see these businesses that love racism and we force them into the swamp not with government, because we won't give them a dime. So they have to unite in these small little garbage communities of other racists that are just trash and have no power. They're just living, but they're not really thriving, in this garbage situation. This is ultimately the goal. For that to come about, you need to have a culture of anti-racism where people say, I'm not going to spend my business there. I'm not going to do business with a racist lawyer. I'm not going to spend my tax dollars with take away racist for a second. Would you go to a business that loves pedophilia, that loves rape, that loves murder? No, of course not. Why would you do a business with one that is okay with racism? What if you got one that's just okay with pedophilia and rape and murder and racism? Well, no, that sucks too, right? So let's get rid of all of that with our culture, with our business, with our associations, not just business, associations. If you say, hey, I want to hang out with you, but I really can't do it if you're going to be like this. So you can either be in a little atmosphere of very few people who need to be racist, or you can come be in this huge society where we love each other. That big society is better. But the thing is if you don't foster this culture, how many people are going to be okay with it when you then say, I'm cool with the government allowing people to discriminate? Because they'll look around and they'll be like, well, you agree with everyone in your personal life discriminating. My hope was that this would be taken care of by the market, but it won't. So that's why this is why the culture is so important. It's not all about government, guys. Joe Jorgensen saying you have to do this if you want to bring libertarianism about. No, a libertarian society does not have to have anti-racist laws. You need to govern yourself in an anti-racist way in order for that libertarian society without those anti-racist laws to come about.
Dude, we got the ideas on our side. So let's act accordingly. But to act as if I or any other individual has to accept Black Lives Matter as an organization or movement, and then on top of that, be actively anti-racist because you feel like just being a good person isn't good enough, is garbage. Black Lives Matter, in my honest opinion, an organization and in a movement, which is, again, morphed into begging to be accepted by white folks and me having to admit that I'm inferior, which I'm not. Got these loser, scrawny white dudes acting like they have privilege. And they have to do something because the black man's world can't move unless they move it for us. No. The movements, the organization is full of hacks, but the movement itself is just that.
Being nice and inclusive and speaking out against racism is not white knighting. This is not stepping in being like, I'll save you, black people. This is what kind of the far right sees as like center libertarians is doing right now, is saying like, oh, dude, that's effed up. Don't say that. Don't treat them like that. Don't do that. And then be like, oh, what, they need you to do it? Well, man, I mean, I guess I'm not talking about somebody needing to stand up to the bully who's pushing these kids around. But if you see a kid getting pushed around, it's not white knighting to stop the bully from pushing the kid around. It's not some type of, oh, what? So you're so privileged? Well, it's not really a matter of privilege. I just wasn't getting picked on, and this kid was, and I don't like that. And I'm strong because I haven't been getting picked on, and I don't feel bad, and I don't have all these confidence issues. That kid might have some confidence issues because he's getting picked on, been marginalized, been treated like a second-class person. And I've had enough, and I'm not going to let it happen anymore. There's nothing wrong with that. That's not a matter of like using your privilege or believing in privilege even. It's just doing the right thing. I mean, this is just really, we're just asking that you do the right thing when you see an injustice. It's not to correct every single one in the world, but you can correct every single one in your sphere, in your community. I don't see anything wrong with that. He's almost done.
And if y'all want to have some honest dialogue about this movement, about even the organization, we can have that. But nobody, libertarian or not, is forced to have to accept or utilize your hashtags or actively be anti-racist. That's just garbage.
All right. So that is my friend Eric July. Again, this is not me hating on Eric July. This is not me hating on the Mises Institute. I really do like those guys. But this is why I broke it down. Because I had to go point by point. He wants to unpackage Joe Jorgensen's meme, and not meme, but tweet, and insert a lot in there that really wasn't there. And so I'm responding with it. I love the dialogue. I'm going to look into a few, the questions we got and comments and this stuff right now. Maybe we can continue this dialogue for a little bit here. I'm already over the hour mark, but they like me here on the show, so I don't mind. Continue this. What isn't normal is having your gaming rig in the kitchen. Thank you, anonymous Facebook user, but this is my life. I appreciate that. You're probably right. All right. So we have a lot of people here who, of course, agree with Eric. Again, the loudest people. I think one of the hardest things to see is the loudest people in the liberty movement are these people who have been hanging on to being nice to the racists. I'm not calling them all bigots. Many of them are just friendly to bigots or saying, hey, it's your right to be a bigot. That is true. I'm not trying to take away from someone's right to be a bad person legally. This is simply what we have to do as far as creating the culture that we need in order for a libertarian society to thrive, is to kind of send these things down the river, right? To say we need to get rid of doing that within ourselves. Racism is not popular. If you've looked out the door, you can see that. This isn't just some recent phenomenon. This is something that's been going on for some time. Even the right wing, and again, I'm going to throw the right wing a bone here, they are not actively racist. Most of the time, they are just friendlier to them than they should be. Sometimes they gaslight or dog whistle or whatever you want to say to irritate people that really hate racism, right? But that is not, having a culture of being okay with racism is not helping. And it's not getting us where we want, and it's not popular. And so the thing is I am aware that the majority of my comments are going to be from, it looks like 3 people that are super upset, that want to believe that Black Lives Matter is a racist movement, or want to believe that they're terrorists, or they're, every single one of them's a Marxist, and she's fine, and they're trying 100 different ways and saying why these are issues, But that's what it is, It's just, this is the truth. And the thing is I will miss some of these people. I told you guys about my friend who is going to leave because of this. He is my friend. He is a good person. I believe he's misguided. I hope he comes back. But the thing is for every one of my friends that is leaving, we've got 2 more replacing him. That friend to me feels irreplaceable just because he is my friend now. I didn't want him to go. I am sorry that he sees things the way that he does. But he does. I am still going to keep witnessing it to him, talking to him, hoping he sees this video and maybe has a change of heart, hoping he sees some way that makes it make sense to him. I'm not the best orator. I'm not the best speaker. I hope he finds somebody who's really good at witnessing to him and meeting him where he's at. Every life matters. Yes, it does. Black lives are part of every lives. Sure. Let's see here. Let's see a couple of the dumb ones. All right. To know what it was, she put up a post and didn't do the research first, and now it's major walkback mode. She has doubled down on this post. In fact, somebody else who is angry with her commented that she doubled down. Oh, it was you. She doubled down. We're not walking back anything. We are getting more people now than we are losing. We're losing loud people, and it sucks because they've been very active and loud, but we're getting more people. Sorry. Tactically, racism's not popular anymore. So it's not, and libertarianism, we could go into the whole paleo thing and our strategy where we tried to court people that were anti-immigrant, tried to bring them into the Libertarian Party because they didn't feel like they had a home in the Republican Party, because the Republican Party gave these immigrants amnesty. That's a real part of libertarian history. And one of the reasons that we do still today have racists that try to latch onto this movement, because the Republicans kicked them to the curb and the Democrats kicked them to the curb. And so you've got some libertarians that maybe will let it happen, but they can't be welcome here either. And the thing is when we see these, not just bigots, but bigot apologists speak up and being loud, they're scaring people off, scaring really good people. All right, let's see here. All right. Yeah, I mean, this is true, Jonathan. Everyone is effed up. That phrase doesn't mean Black Lives Matter. A perfectly reasonable statement to most libertarians. It means a whole slew of status nonsense. Yeah, it does, to some people. But we can break it down, talk about the non-status parts. There's no state implied in it. Like you said, it's a perfectly reasonable statement. So why not go in on that? Why not talk about that? I'm not trying to be overly critical of the Mises folks. I'm really not. I understand where they come from. There's a lot of people who just says everything the Mises folks does is bad. No, I'm not with that. They're good people. Okay. Matt's leaving. There's another one. See you later, Matt. Have a good one, buddy. Sorry that being anti-racist is the straw that broke the camel's back for you here in the Libertarian Party. Hopefully you'll come back someday. Hopefully you'll get to learn kind of what's going on and more of why it's cool to be anti-racism and why being anti-racist is really going to help out the Libertarian Party. Like, I really do hope he sees that. I do. Part of me wants to be sarcastic and make pot shots, but like, that's not what I'm here for. I want this movement to succeed. So let's see here. Let's keep going. Is racism more of a problem now than in the past? No, it's not. That's good, right? That's good. We've made some strides. The idea, though, is that we're still not done with it. I mentioned the issue at my restaurant, and that's happened. I've done restaurants, let's see, in Texas, Washington, Colorado, and Utah. I've been on part of a management team in those 4 states. And we've had to deal with it in all 4 of them. It's not overt. None of these places were people regularly using the N-word. We did have some racists at, openly and using those words in one place in Colorado, but it's not as much of a problem than in the past. But we're not done with it. We still have the laws on the books, right? We still have laws on the books that say that were made to target Black people. And they still exist. Still targeting their culture, still targeting them. It's not enough to be less racist. We're trying to get rid of it. That dream that Martin Luther King Jr. has, don't you want to get there? So when you see a study that says that you're 3 times more likely to be called back if you have a white sounding name than a black sounding name, most people have an issue with that. Now, I don't want the government to get involved, but we do need to talk to people and say, like, hey, just so you know, you should be aware that this is happening. And that's going to be good that this is happening. Let's see here. It's a neo-Marxist Trojan horse. Yes, we're bringing them all in and they will make the Libertarian Party a bunch of Marxists. Karl Marx sucks. I don't know any socialist that actually likes the works of Karl Marx. Some of them will be like, Karl Marx is amazing. Anybody who's actually read Marx knows he sucks. I mean, you can't get through a book where he's not talking about maybe a little bit of genocide here and maybe a little bit of kill all the landowners there. I mean, the guy, he was so disingenuous. He actually wrote books for how to talk to, the proletariat. And then he's like, hey, my bourgeoisie friends, he's got a whole other book that's like, hey guys, my rich friends here, when I'm talking to them in the language of their idiocy, but here's what the revolution actually means for us. The dude sucks. Okay. I'm not defending communism or anything like this. So when I am telling you, because I hate Marx, that this is not going to be what happens to the libertarian movement to become more Marxist, you better believe that's the truth. All right. I am wary of it. And I know that that's not what's going to happen. We are not more Marxist. We're not going to be more Marxist. People tried to bring in the racists, as I mentioned earlier, and that didn't work. The racists are still a very huge, not huge, they're a huge problem. They're a small minority in our party. Their apologists are a little bit loud sometimes, but they are not that big. That's not what he said. All I did was play what he said, so I guess I'm sorry. Let's see here. Yeah, at least we be thankful that Joe. Oh, love that, Laura. Thank you. At least we be thankful that Joe's people's attention so much. This becomes such an outrage. Yeah, this is a conversation we should be having. Are you saying that Eric's a bigot? No, I'm not saying he's a bigot. Yeah. All right. Let's see here. Oh, it's the guy who said he's out. He came back. Libertarian Party has always been anti-racist. That's a big part of the issue. That and supporting a Marxist group accidentally by not researching and jumping on the bandwagon. Libertarian has always been inclusive, not exclusive. Matt, I totally agree. We're not supporting a group accidentally. That, believe me, when you tweet something like this, you know what you're doing. Jo Jorgensen is a senior lecturer. She's smart enough to know what she's doing. We're not jumping on a bandwagon. This has been our bandwagon. They're jumping on ours. When they say something like Black Lives Matter, they might think they coined that phrase, but we've been dealing with that since the beginning and when we were founded. All right. So yeah, this is, it is what it is. I mean, it's let's see here. When we talk about being anti-racist, anti-racism is, Laura, you rock, by the way. I'm going to post one more from you. Thank you for the compliment. I love you very much. Go, Hoodie, go. You're patient. You're so patient and kind in your responses / explanations. I like to hear what you have to say. Laura, I like hearing from you very much. I don't get too much positive reinforcement, and this means a lot to me, especially on stuff like this, because like I said, I know the loud ones are the ones that are going to take issue with it. But anti-racism, it has a definition. I have it right here. The policy or practice of opposing racism and promoting racial tolerance. Sure. But I think most people would oppose racism and promote racial tolerance. So when some left-wing nut writes an essay that talks about here's what it means to me and gives you some now we can do a whole bunch of Marxist stuff. They're reading the definition and putting their own spin on it. There is a definition. Words mean things. That's what the word means to be anti-racist. If you think that a certain leftist person put a spin on it, you're probably right. But if you think that the libertarians are trying to add to that spin, you're very wrong and very mistaken. I'm going to close with this. Libertarians, we're finally popular. That's hard to say. It's a wacky thing to say. I couldn't even believe this when I saw it. Poll was released the other day, pretty big one. It broke it down into, for some reason, progressives, liberals, conservatives, and libertarians, and how they see each other. As you can guess, the progressives and the liberals did not see the conservatives very well. The conservatives didn't see the liberals very well. They saw each other poorly. They saw themselves very positively. Now, libertarians, where did we sit with those guys? We're at 55% support from, I think it was progressives and conservatives, and 56% for support, seeing positively was the way the question was phrased, by liberals. Over half of the country, first time in my life this has ever happened, by the way, likes libertarians, thinks positively of us. That's a new role for us. Being popular, being well liked. Now, yeah, we're not going to win these elections. I get it, right? We don't have political power. But as far as socially goes, we are popular people. We walk into a room, and instead of there being, I hate this guy, people are like, you know what? I mildly like this guy. Yeah, it's just 55%. I would love it if 100% of everybody thought positively of us. But being seen positively by over 55% of liberals, progressives, and conservatives is nothing to sneeze at. And it's okay to be a bit popular and use some of that popularity. Right now, we're not the most famous, but it's only a matter of time till popularity turns into a little bit of that fame. So we need to embrace it. Learn to love it. When we see something like this, we can retreat to our libertarian hole. And I've seen so many libertarians that want to do this, right? To say that we should be focused on libertarian principles and reading the platform, and we should no, all of a sudden they see us become popular or do something popular, and they say, no, I can't handle it. I'm not ready for fame. I'm not ready to be famous. I'm not ready I love being the loser. I love being the guy that everybody hates. I mean, remember 4 years ago? I can't wait. Everybody thinks I'm right-wing because I hate Obama. Now it's Trump. Everybody's going to think I'm left-wing. Everybody's going to hate my guts. Libertarians aren't that anymore. You're no longer the person that everybody hates. You'd think it would be a good thing, but people have an identity in being hated. You got to leave that behind. It doesn't work anymore. If you want to be hated and you want to be a loser, libertarianism is done with that. We're not seen that way anymore. And it's not going the other way. Because I can tell you, these people that dip a toe in liberty really aren't going to come back. Yes, there were some racists from the Republican Party that are now going back to the Republican Party. All right, goodbye. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, Yes, was there maybe an occasional authoritarian socialist that wanted to take over the party? Chair the party. He became a tanky and he left and he joined the Democratic Socialists of America. Bye. See ya. He's gone. Right? They leave. It's very few of them. Most people that genuinely stick their toe in and try liberty get sucked into it. It's an intoxicating philosophy because it fits together so well. You look at these left-wingers that are like, well, hold on, I don't like the cops anymore. That's something that the left was actually really big on, is using police force. You know what? I kind of support the Second Amendment. I support people's right to bear arms. That's not something that the left really likes about me. Oh man, these business licenses that disproportionately drive Black people away from being able to support their families. The left really wants to expand on those. Censorship. Man, I really hate censorship. Oh man, the left is kind of big on censorship. So wait, all of a sudden I'm getting drawn more into liberty. Yeah, I was a left-leaning person. I wanted social equality, justice, equal rights. I think the wage gap is ridiculous. I think that having a Fed that gives money to banks, that gives money to their cronies, that gives money loans to businesses, that finally trickles down after 8 rounds of taxation, that eventually finally goes to you, is a crap policy. Yeah, libertarians agree with that. It is a crap policy. And we're going to be doing a lot better. So we're more popular with them. Just as popular with them as we are with the Republicans now. You know, we used to be a little right of center. Now we're kind of center. That's cool. We're going to keep becoming more popular. So when you see somebody like this who wants to retreat into that, like, no, these are our ideas on our terms. I'm not going to say Black Lives Matter. What did he say at the beginning? I block it on Twitter. I block the hashtag on Twitter because I get so offended when I hear somebody say it. I just can't even see it. You know, somebody say Black Lives Matter. So I have it blocked. They're not interested in joining that ride to the top. They're not interested in that world set free in our lifetime. They're interested in being a minority, of being a loser. I'm done being a loser. The Chicago Cubs, before they won the World Series, had a poll among their fans that say, hey, you ready for the Chicago Cubs to win the World Series? And most of their fans said, no, we like being the losers. Now, thankfully, they won, and their fans, the ones that were in the stadium, were very pro-Cubs, so it wasn't like a big scandal, but it was weird to see that. They had developed an identity in being a loser. Ditch that identity. Be a winner, is what I'm telling you now. It's going to be worth it. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going places right now. You just not have to let the left and right trigger you and snowflake you and gaslight you and all these things that we accuse them of doing into joining another party or leaving the libertarian, whatever it may be, getting off of the liberty movement. It's okay to be popular. You're going to be popular, and I look forward to doing it with you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Thank you to all our Patreon people helping us get it together. Thank you for all your comments, your questions. Your feedback means a lot to me. You guys who disagree with me, I totally understand. I appreciate the honest disagreement with those of you who are disagreeing honestly. Like I said, I respect it and I understand you. And I just hope to hear more from all of you. Again, have a great night, and I'll see you next time.